Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly market roundup. I'm Eva Omivisi.
Hello.
Hi, Ben. How's your end?
Yeah, okay. It's been a bit of a busy day. Busy day. Things lots going on. So keeping me busy. How about you?
Ah, Winter Wonderland. Busy day as well, but we're moving on.
For sure.
Okay, first week of April and end of the quarter. Any thoughts on how first quarter went? Anything interesting? Any surprises?
Yeah, so I think it was a bit quieter than I'd anticipated. Yeah, I think coming into the start of the year, for those who watch the annual outlook, I was expecting a little bit more chop to the markets, and we started off with a bit of a dip into January, but then February, March were quite good. Um, Yields were down a little bit, so bonds are down a little bit for the first quarter, but generally markets were pretty good. Some surprises there. The one tech name that's been struggling is Tesla, so I've been looking at that one, paying
Yeah.
attention, seeing maybe it may be worth a buy potentially. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, generally pretty good first quarter. So we've just been going through those performance numbers and
Yeah.
happy to see how they look.
Okay. Positive quarter then.
Yes.
Okay. This morning we had job numbers from Canada and US. Anything interesting there?
Yeah, so it's a bit. I mean, everybody looks at the top level numbers. So when we go through
Yeah.
the charts, there's a couple that grab my attention. So I'll dig into that a little bit more. But we saw the Canadian dollar lose some value when the jobs numbers came out. So about 0.6% initially, weakening of the Canadian dollar versus US. So the market generally looked at it as a positive report for the US and a negative
Right.
one for Canada. But there's a couple charts that I'll dig into a little bit more and just talk about the numbers a bit more detail.
Okay. I also saw some interesting news. Modi said he wants to double Indian economy over the next 6 years. Any thoughts?
That's a big economy to double,
Y-
I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, generally for years I've been optimistic about India. And I hope at least from what I've seen and what he's saying is that that means that the Indian economy will be much more open to trade and letting their currency float and some of the things that I think are necessary to allow their economy to grow that quickly. But there's some great businesses in India, but it's really still kind of difficult to invest in them. So I'm quite optimistic. I do think long term the Indian economy can do quite well, and I'd like to, find a way to get access to some of those companies. And so, Reliance, which is one of the biggest conglomerates in the world, is
Yeah.
probably their biggest company there, and it's interesting, but not super easy to invest in. So certainly optimistic, and people seem to like Modi. And he seems to find a way to be friends with Putin and with Biden at the same time.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Anything else catch your eye? Any trading this week?
So not too much trading. As I mentioned, the Tesla I'm watching, probably for some higher risk people, I think that's going to make sense. The I'd say the biggest thing would be the metals companies, primarily the silver companies starting to pick up here. We've seen like some of the like Hecla and Core Mining. These are and mid cap silver producers up 30% this week, and so that's a big jump.
Yep.
Starting to play some catch up to the commodities themselves. So I'm watching that quite closely.
Okay.
Yeah, and but from trading, still pretty quiet, more watch and see.
Okay. Want to jump into the slides? How many do you have
Sure.
for us today?
I kept it light. I just have three. Very,
Oh,
very
wow.
simple. Very
Good.
simple.
Okay.
All right, just let me share them on the screen here. Okay. With Microsoft continuing to change their systems all of the time, I just takes a little bit. There we go. Just let me know if you can see it okay.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Would you like me to take you off the screen? Just leave the
Oh,
slides.
yeah, that's good. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Good. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Excellent. So jobs, yeah, so the jobs numbers, and so I think for me anyways, this is interesting whether, the headline numbers pick this up or not. The as we look at this, the blue squiggle is part-time employment year over year since 1999, and the red solid line would be your full-time employment. And so as we got into kind of later last year, maybe late third quarter, early fourth quarter last year, we started to see this number diverge. So if we look at the dotted line, this is part-time employment accelerating, and full-time employment is decelerating. And so you can look at it in different stages. If we look at this other period here, this was COVID, so that's an anomaly and a standout. But if we look at other periods, like the housing crisis, we saw a similar type of divergence that we're seeing right now, where part-time went up a lot, full-time. We look at the recession of 2001, which was kind of the tech time. We saw again similarities where we get a spike in a part-time and a drop in full-time. So we get a pretty big divergence here. And again, headline looks robust and everyone's optimistic. But if you dig below that, over the last 12 months, there's been 1.4 million full-time job losses in the United States. But part-time obviously accelerating as people are trying to make enough money to pay their bills. So the job market actually looked quite weak when you look below the surface. And so that was the US data I put on the previous slide, and this would be the Canadian report, which I think is important when we look at it as well. So this is the 3-month change in employment in Canada. And so private sector plus self-employed had negative growth. And then public sector, which is, if you look at the headline number, it looks pretty good. But if all the hirings in the public sector, I mean, that's not great. Also, as and if we get a government change at some point, that number is going to drop pretty dramatically. So not a good, healthy look here. We want to see private sector and self-employed growing, or even a little bit more equalized to what we have. So that was the Canadian numbers. And I think the market tended to read into this a little bit more than what the US job numbers are. And then on the last one, so I do obviously, as you know, we talk about seeing what's happening to the blockchain market, and as we start to get this integration, we've seen obviously the Bitcoin ETF, which we talked about, but what we're starting to see now is kind of that crossover where blockchain's starting to go into securities or stocks or treasuries. And this report shows tokenized U.S. Treasury market. So, January there was little, if any. Now we're looking at something in the neighborhood of $1 billion in tokenized Treasury money market. And the reason this is interesting and relevant is, right now, if I buy, I just say a UST bill, for example, in order to execute that trade, I call my trading desk. The trader then goes to the market. He looks for the allocation in the market, probably goes to like CPP or OMERS or somebody that has a big allocation in treasuries. Then he buys it from them. You know, they then in turn sell it to me, and I in turn move it into the client's account. Obviously, all of that process takes pennies, so there's money. So there's money lost there for the client. And then it takes 24 hours for that to settle. If it's a bond, it's 48 hours to settle. If it's a stock, it's 48 hours to settle. So by these companies starting to tokenize these assets, settlement is instantaneous. So if Franklin Templeton decides to allow us, right now it's only institutions, but allow us to trade on these blockchain, we'd have instantaneous settlement. What that means for the clients and individuals is it means instantaneous access to that money and a lot cheaper, so more money in the pocket for them. So interesting to see that the speed at which this blockchain is starting to move out and tokenization into assets is moving quickly. And you could see it happen quite quickly in stocks relative to real estate, which a lot of people talk about. So interesting to see how this is evolving, and it's just I follow it because I think it's great, and I think it's going to be a benefit for clients and individuals. But it's the speed at which it's happening is quite high at this point. So that's it for the charts today.
That'll be nice to see. Great slides, great slides. Just a quick one on admin. I have started sending out tax packages. If you need absolutely anything, please reach out to me and I will be happy to help. So Ben, finally, what do you see ahead for next week? Anything specific you want to share?
Well, yesterday we saw a slight correction in the markets, and then we're bouncing back here, and I see the most major markets right now are up a little bit, and volatility's down kind of 10% or so today. I'd be looking to see if there's follow through on that. As I mentioned on the earlier in the conversation, just about the gold and silver and the miners, there's a historically wide spread between where the commodities are and where the stocks are presently trading. So I'd be watching to see if there's a gap closing there. And some of the Canadian financials here are looking a little bit stretched. So maybe thinking about taking some profits here and there. But no, nothing too dramatic. I guess the biggest dramatic thing in the world is we're having a solar eclipse on Monday. Did you know that?
Yeah. Are you going to watch it?
Well, I don't know if you know, but the kids' schools are closed because they're afraid of the kids looking up to the sky during the day.
Oh yeah.
So the kids' schools are closed on Monday, so I'm sure everyone will have a chance to have a look at that. But yeah, definitely I'll look up and have a peek.
Oh, interesting. I guess it's a wrap. Any parting shots?
I think that's it. No, you've been sending out a lot of tax stuff, so certainly you've been busy with that and interacting with accountants. So if anyone wants us to talk directly with the accountant as well, it's no problem. And yeah, if you need anything, meeting or review as well, you're happy to book something in as well there. So
Absolutely.
I'd say that's about it for me this week.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, you too. Take care.
Bye.